Hello everybody, this is Alex or RCG Blade, and I'm coming at you with a bit of an unusual video for the channel here. So for the past 3 days I have been visiting Toronto FanExpo, and I was lucky enough to be able to ask Jason Aaron some questions over this past couple days. It's been awesome, and I got to sit in on a spotlight panel for Jason Aaron where he kind of just goes over Absolute Superman, you know, how he got started in comics, the kind of process for him, and then some of the other stuff he's done, such as Bug Wars or his Uncle Scrooge comics. So the following excerpt is just going to be my recording of his panel. It's cut off at the beginning, unfortunately, but essentially what he was talking about was just how he got into comics, how he won a Marvel, like, up-and-coming artist thing, and it kind of gave him a chance to prove himself, and he's just kind of been working for Marvel since then. Once his exclusivity got over with, you know, he started doing some stuff with DC and some other people. So that's your context. I wanted to keep this intro short and sweet. There will be time codes in the description to the best of my abilities. And without further ado, this is Jason Aaron's Spotlight panel from FanExpo Toronto 2025.
Vertigo was its own little clubhouse within DC. But now I'm getting to do DC stuff for real. Batman Off-World was the first thing I did, which was a weird, like, Batman space story, which sounds weird, but to me, it's still like the young, raw Batman year one kind of Batman. It's just the first time that guy goes into outer space. And then I got to, the first two things I did were Batman and Superman. I got to do a couple issues of Action Comics, which were really cool. And then kind of out of the blue, at a point in time where I was like, I had said, I don't want to do any ongoing books. You know, I was kind of burned out after writing 3 ongoings at a time for Marvel. I was like, no more ongoings. I want to do a bunch of small projects. And then suddenly I got offered Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the 40th anniversary, and I was like, well, shit, I guess I'll do that one. And then Scott Snyder called me, and he had this idea for the Absolute Universe, and I was like, God damn it, I guess I can't say no to that. Like, that. The chance to do, I mean, as soon as we started talking, we were just talking very general ideas for what the Absolute Universe would look like and how the characters could be different. And Scott had some ideas for Batman. He had ideas for kind of all the characters, but the most fully formed one was Batman. He didn't even really know what book he wanted to write. We were just sort of talking in general terms, and I realized pretty quickly, like, yeah, I want to do this. This is a very rare opportunity. You know, in the 25 years I've been in comics, these kind of books don't come along that often, right? The chance to kind of do this character from the ground up. So I realized pretty quickly, yeah, I want to be involved, but only if I could do Superman. And that became Absolute Superman. Which is the main ongoing book I'm working on at this moment, and the one that's very much open-ended. The pitch I first submitted, like, we had the first Absolute meeting was in DC, was in New York for New York Comic Con, where it was the first time I pitched, like, here's my vision of Superman. I wrote out kind of a Bible, just thoughts about the character, how he's different, how his story's different, how Krypton's different, and then I plotted out the first 12 issues. So those first 12 issues will wind up being like 14 issues. Which in my mind is really one big story. I mean, I think we're at issue 10, I think is the one that just came out, right? Like, I forget sometimes what's out and what's not out, but really this is all one big story. The Krypton stuff, the stuff on Earth with the Peacemakers, Ra's al Ghul, all that, one big story. That'll take us through issue 14, where there'll be some more surprises along the way, some more revelations, some more things, good and bad, that'll happen with Kal-El, and with a big ending in 14 that'll kind of change a lot for him. Like, I look at this book in terms of levels, you know, and really the thing that's most important to me about the Absolute Universe in general is, one, to do new stories that feel more relevant to today with these characters, while also honoring kind of who they've always been. You know, with me, really, with Superman, I looked back at, like, what did this character mean to Siegel and Schuster in 1938? You know, who were they? What was this character about? And really, you know, leaned very much into the idea of this is the ultimate immigrant story, you know, and what is it? story look like in 2025 versus 1938? And that's really, forged a lot of the direction of the book. So some of it was to do that, to honor who these characters are, to do brand new stories that we haven't seen before. That's why I wanted to use Ra's al Ghul instead. I didn't want to do another, here's the brand new, daring new take on Superman, and it's Superman fighting Lex Luthor, and it's, Lois Lane working in the Daily Planet. I wanted everybody you meet in this book to be where you don't expect them to be. Nobody's life worked out the way it was quote unquote supposed to in the Absolute Universe until Superman comes along. But then the other thing was, to do stories we haven't seen before. And then, I had another point and I was lost. I even got a good sleep last night. The other thing is to not drive past any moments or any stories. I have, hopefully it shows, I've been very interested in showing a Superman who is still trying to get his shit together, still trying to figure himself out. I think of the cover, Frank Whiteley's cover for All-Star Superman, which is a famous cover where Superman kind of sitting in the clouds. And so a guy who's so comfortable, so self-assured, so Superman, more than anybody else on the face of the earth, knows exactly who he is, right? That version of Superman does. Absolute Superman has no idea. He is still figuring it out as we go. He knows who he was in Krypton. He had a very Kryptonian identity. It was important to me that he was already in some way fully formed as a young man, that there was already this, what we think of as his Clark Kent persona it's not an affectation. That's who he is, that's who he was as a kid. I think of him as sort of, there are a lot of professional athletes who are very quiet, soft-spoken people off the field, but on the field they're like a demon, right? Play like they're possessed. You can be both of those things in the same person. So I very much wanted a Superman who was like that. But then that planet blows up. Everybody who knows that version of him dies. He comes to Earth. He doesn't know who he is. He's still trying to figure that out. He didn't have the sort of upbringing with the Kents that we're used to. So it's still a guy who doesn't know who he is. He has things that are important to him. He remembers the lessons from his parents. He remembers what life was like on Krypton. But, when we see him get angry, he's very justified in his anger. And I think you see a Superman who believably could be pushed to the point of killing people. We haven't seen him do that. And I'm not saying we're going to, but I think it's believable that he would be justified in feeling that sort of anger after everything he's been through. So I don't want to drive past any of those moments. I don't want to get to calm, confident, self-assured, Superman who's flying through the cosmos. We have to earn our way there. He's got to earn his way there. So this book will continue to level up in different ways as we go. That'll mean Superman leveling up in terms of his powers, in terms of his, his suit. I've had a lot of fun exploring what his costume does in terms of his cape and the sentience of it and all that sort of stuff. We'll continue to play with that. He's only been here on Earth for 5 years at this point in the book. So every day, as he's soaking up the sunlight, he's getting stronger and stronger and stronger and learning how to use those powers. So the Superman who's we really haven't even seen him fly yet. He jumps around and he floats a little bit, and the cape does some of the work. But getting to the point where there's a Superman who's flying around and moving the moon, it's going to take a lot of leveling up to get to that point. So the book will change as we go. Superman will change as we go. The villains will change. Everything will change as it continues to level up and level up. And yeah, issue 14 will be a next big step in that. Issue 15 will be kind of a standalone issue. I haven't even told my editor this, so you guys get the scoop on what's to come. If you read the Thor stuff that I did, my first Thor book was Thor: God of Thunder, and then similar to that, it was really those first, I think 12, 13 issues were really one big story with Gore the God Butcher and the God Bomb and all that stuff. That was really one big arc. right after that arc, I did kind of an issue of Thor returning to Earth, and it was kind of what's a day in the life of Thor like, which was also very much me as somebody who's been an atheist for now more than half my life, 30 something years, writing about, leading into the idea of this guy as a god, and what does that mean, and what kind of God would I like to believe in. That particular issue was very much about that. This is what I would like a God to do in terms of his interactions with us. So with Absolute Superman, I'm going to do the Superman version of that. I mean, really, I think that issue of Thor, when I wrote that, was the first time I really thought seriously about what I would do with Superman. Because it felt, people at the time even said it felt a little Superman-y. And I was like, yeah, it kind of was. That was definitely on my mind. So now I'm going to do the flip side of that and do the Superman version. So that'll be issue 15, will be a standalone, like, what does this guy do at that point in the story when things have changed a little bit for him? What does he do in an average day? After that, we'll dive into sort of a couple of big arcs with big new villains. There'll be multiple villains we'll be meeting. I'll be exploring a little more of the traditional Superman villains. We'll also be bringing in a couple more that are more unusual. Like I said, I didn't want to start the book with Superman versus Lex Luthor. I love the idea of using Ra's al Ghul, and he fit perfectly with the story that I was already trying to tell in terms of who this Superman was and what he fights for and what he's fighting against. It made perfect sense to have that be Lazarus Corp, instead of Lex Corp. So I want to keep using characters that are surprising. To me, I think, again, that's one of the things that's exciting about Absolute, is everything shouldn't fall into the same neat categories, right? Where Batman just fights the same Batman villains and Superman fights the same Superman villains and on and on. Like, I think all the books you've seen, some of that gets shaken up. And I want to continue to do that and have things that feel surprising but it's not like you're doing it just for the sake of being surprising. It's like, what is the story you're trying to tell? So there'll be a couple more characters we'll see like that in the next big arc of Superman that you may be not expecting. One of them will appear for the first time in the Absolute Evil one-shot, which comes out October, November, sometime then. I'm not writing it, it's written by Al Ewing. And it focuses on sort of the bad guys of the Absolute Universe, which, it'll have the main villains kind of from all the books you've seen so far. And we'll start to see kind of what are the connections between those villains. It also introduces a few new characters. There's a couple big moments in that'll be of interest to Superman fans. So I would recommend you go read it. If you don't, if by chance you don't, store sells out, you can't get it, whatever. I think it's another thing that's important to us in the Absolute Universe is that you can just read Superman and everything you need I should give you on the pages of that book. I think I met a few of y'all this week who kind of got into comics through Absolute Superman, which makes me very, very happy. So I think you always want to, we always hope for those people. You never know, do they actually exist? Are we creating new readers with any of these books? I think the Absolute Universe has been the best version of anything we could do to try to make that happen. And it does feel like it very much has. The numbers on all the books have been really incredible, and it does feel like there's a lot of those people who have never read a Superman book before, or never really read comics before. So, I think about them when I'm writing. I want every book I write to be accessible to somebody who's never read this character before. Whether that's when I was doing Thor, doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's like, for me as a writer, I feel like you always have to show your work. I can't expect that any of you kind of show up to the party already invested in these characters. A lot of you do. A lot of you, pretty much everybody knows who the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are, right? And you fell in love with them from the cartoon or the movies or the toys or whatever, different versions of that over the course of 40 years. But when I'm writing the book, I have to think of it as like, you've been stuck in a bunker for 40 years and you've never heard of these characters before. You just came out, and the first thing that happens is, for some reason, somebody hands you this first issue of this comic. You need to get everything to make you excited about these characters in the pages of that book. So I feel like that even more so about Absolute Superman. So that'll continue to be the mandate, and you'll start to see connections between the books. We want the Absolute Universe to feel like a cohesive world, and it's all wide open. It's very much like just a handful of us kind of doing whatever the hell we want with this universe, which feels amazing. So we want it to feel cohesive. We want things to build as we go in terms of the connections between these characters, but I think we're also trying to be considerate and thoughtful about that. And I've been one of the people in the room saying, let's just slow down and enjoy this ride, and we got all these bullets in our gun, and we shouldn't just like fire them all off at the same time, I think the first time, I think that we've already announced it, that coming up you'll see Absolute Batman and Absolute Wonder Woman meet for the first time, right? Which will be the very first kind of meeting between any of these heroes. I'm excited for that, just like as a 2-issue thing between those two books, as opposed to let's just rush into throwing everybody together and doing an Absolute Justice League. Like, that's clearly a bullet in the gun we can fire at some point, but let's explore all these smaller moments before we get to that point, and not kind of do what feels more obvious or feels more expected. I mean, I think the whole mandate of Absolute is this should feel fresh and new and exciting and surprising. So what can we do along the way that feels different? So we are talking about what the plan is for that, but I very much don't want it to be just let's throw everybody together and do a big crossover. So I don't think that's the version that you'll see. Because again, you kind of drag past some of the moments and stories that you can do with these characters. I mean, like I said, Superman can't even fly yet. So I don't want to rush past the first time he meets other heroes, let alone the first time he's flying through space and fighting world-threatening enemies and then getting involved in epic crossovers. Like, once you push the guy to that point, you can't go back and do as many of those, the early stories where he's struggling to figure himself out. I mean, probably my favorite moment in the last Batman movie was that one brief moment where he was like standing on top of a building and he's about to jump off, which you've seen Batman do like a million times, right? He always jumps off buildings. But he has that pause, like there's that little bit of like, I'm about to jump off a fucking building moment, which you never see those moments. So I love writing those kind of moments. I loved doing that with Jane Foster, Thor. I'm very much enjoying doing those with Superman. I don't want to rush past any of those. So that's my long way of saying I plan on being on Superman for a long time. It's open-ended. Going into launching the Absolute stuff, we had no idea what the response to it would have been. If the sales had been crappy, we'd be wrapping it up, right now. But the sales have been really incredible. They just announced recently that they're reprinting every single issue so far of every Absolute book. So even with the trades starting to come out, they're still going back and reprinting all the way back to issue 1, which issue 1s are, Batman's up to like an 8th or 9th printing, and Superman I think is 6th or 7th. And they're reprinting every single issue, so that you can go to a comic book store and they can have any of those issues in stock. So that I haven't heard of that happening with an entire line of comics ever in my time in comics. So the response has been really incredible, which gives us the confidence to feel like, okay, well, we're just going to keep doing this until it falls apart or until we run out of ideas. So I feel very much like, again, this is kind of an opportunity that doesn't come along all the time, every day. So I want to ride this train as long as it'll last till I run out of Superman ideas. I did 101 issues of Thor. I'm not saying I can match that, but I do feel like for my time at Marvel, what Thor was to that, I want Absolute Superman to be for my time at DC. So whether that turns into 30, 60, 500 issues, who knows, we'll see. But I certainly feel like I have a wealth of Superman stories to tell, and we very, very much are just getting started. Again, in my mind, we're not even at the end of the first arc of the book yet. Beyond that, what else am I working on? I mentioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I've been doing that for, I think the next to last issue is about to come out, issue 11. Issue 12 will be my last issue, me and Juan for our last issue. That book has been really fun. Again, it was its 40th anniversary is a chance for me to kind of go back to the version of those characters that I loved from when I was a kid, which is that original Mirage Studios book, which very much felt, it was black and white, gritty art, these talking turtles running around the grimy streets of New York, very much inspired by 80s action movies and Frank Miller comics and all that kind of stuff that I love. It felt very punk rock. It felt like these two young guys just doing this comic in their basement. That's the version of Turtles that I wanted this to feel like, which I feel like we have checked a lot of those boxes. I've gotten to work with an incredible list of artists over the course of these 11 issues, with Juan Ferreira being the latest, who has been absolutely killing it. This was always meant to be a 12-issue story, so this is exactly the story as I pitched it way back when. There was a thought or a chance at one point that maybe I could have done more beyond that, but we couldn't work it out. So yeah, issue 12 will be the end of that story. I think the first trade's out, and yeah, and issue 11 is probably about to come out any day now. Beyond that, I have for Marvel, my new Uncle Scrooge book just started. First issue of that just came out, which maybe that sounds weird. The guy who wrote Scalped and The Goddamned doing Uncle Scrooge, but I love Uncle Scrooge. I did an Uncle Scrooge book last year for Marvel. It's called Uncle Scrooge and the Infinity Dime, and I wrote an intro to that. Talked very much about my connection to the character. Read all those Don Rosa books with my son when he was little, and he's 20 years old now, and he and I still talk about those Uncle Scrooge stories. So I've written that story, and this new one is very much a love letter to Don Rosa in particular, and Carl Barks, who created Uncle Scrooge. And there's a long, rich history of Uncle Scrooge stories in comics. If you only know the DuckTales cartoon, which I loved both versions of the DuckTales cartoon, but if you only know that version, you don't know the real character, and it's just one of the greatest adventure characters, pure adventure characters in the history of comics, in my opinion. Not just of talking and anthropomorphic animal comics, but of all comics. I have a deep appreciation for Uncle Scrooge, and this new book is called Earth's Mightiest Duck, and it kind of explores the history of Uncle Scrooge. Like, he has a lot of different roles, a lot of different versions of him over the course of his life, from a gold prospector in the Klondike to young shoeshine boy in Glasgow, and he's been a cowboy and a pirate and Lord of Castle McDuck, and all these different versions. Like, we see kind of those versions of him having to team up for a fight in his own mind, as he's having a fight to protect what to him is really the most precious thing. It's not just his money bin full of coins that he swims through like a dolphin, but it's memories of the adventures along the way. So it's a big, crazy, fun, gorgeously drawn Uncle Scrooge comic that I think also has hopefully some touching moments in it. And that's a 4-issue mini that again just started. And that's kind of the only thing I'm doing for Marvel at the moment. I just did Godzilla versus Thor, which I was also really proud of. Thanks. If you have read my Thor run at all, if you enjoyed any of that, in particular, if you enjoyed the beginning stuff, the Thor God of Thunder, I recommend you pick up Godzilla versus Thor. I've tried to keep everything under wraps in terms of what actually happens in that story, which thankfully Marvel has done. I hate, sometimes things get spoiled before the book is even out, but if you did enjoy that Thor run at all, I think you will dig Godzilla versus Thor. The creator-owned book I have, the main creator-owned book I have coming out right now is called Bug Wars for Image, which issue 6 of that just came out, which is the end of book 1. And the trade paperback will be out in October, I believe. We actually sent it to print this week, or no, Monday, I think. It's on the one hand, it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It's an oh no, I'm shrunk story. It's like kid finds something, gets shrunk down to the size of a bug, goes on an adventure. Normally you think of that as a kid story. This is not a kid story. Don't let your children read this. It's like the Game of Thrones version of that kind of story. So this kid goes on this adventure literally in his own backyard, and turns out there's like kingdoms of tiny murderous bug people. There's the spider witches, there's the beetle barbarians, the ant people are like kind of like the Roman Empire. So it's this fantasy kingdom literally in this kid's backyard. There's a lot of world building stuff. The first time I've done like a pure fantasy story, which I've been a fantasy nerd since I was a kid, so I'm loving that part of it. As crazy as all that sounds, it's very much a personal story for me, and that it's literally my backyard from when I was like 10 years old. It's the house I lived in Piney Woods, Alabama, a small town in the backwoods of Alabama, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, down a dirt dead end street. Huge backyard. Seemed huge to me as a kid. If I went there now, it's probably pretty small, but giant backyard, surrounded by woods. It's my actual backyard. I drew the map. You know, every good fantasy book has to have a map. We got a map in the first issue. I drew a really shitty version of it, and our later Baker Kara made a prettier version. But that's the yard. That's the yard where I played in as a kid. The yard at the point in my life when I was falling in love with comics, when I was first pulling books off the spinner rack. That's the yard I was running around and running through those woods and making up stories in my mind. I feel like that is very much the space where I became a comic book writer, where I just fell in love with storytelling. Like I'm literally using the same muscles now professionally that I first developed as a 10-year-old playing in that yard. So this is very much a story, again, about who that kid was, all the things I was into. It's like a mishmash of all those things mixed together. And again, book one just ended. It was 6 issues. It's really like 7.5 issues, because issue 1 was like 40 pages. This is just the beginning. Like this kind of takes you through part of the yard, explores some of those different, they're called mites, the little people are mites. But there's still tons of that yard that we have not yet explored. So we just announced that there'll be more coming next year. There's a special one-shot special in January called the Spider Witch special, which will have different stories that kind of take place before and after book 1, filling in the kind of history and culture of the spider witches who live in some old potted ferns on the side of the house. And then after that, later in book 2, later in the year, we'll have book 2, which right now we're calling The Fellowship of the Fucked Up. Sorry I'm cursing so much. There's no small children here, right? We're all grown adults. Yeah, so that'll be my main creator-owned focus for the foreseeable future. I am so thoroughly loving that book. It's an idea I've had a long time, and I kind of just now got to it. And Mahmoud Asrar is the perfect creative partner on that. He and I did Conan the Barbarian and King Conan stuff for Marvel, and we wanted to do our own thing. So I feel like I'm just getting started on that. There's so much more stuff I want to do. Thankfully, the response has been great. Sales have been great. So expect to see more Absolute Superman and more Bug Wars from me for a long, long time. Look at my notes. What else am I doing? I think that's all the stuff that I have coming out right now, right? Remind me if I'm forgetting something. Of the stuff you don't know about, there's nothing I can announce. I can say I've written several, the first issues of several things that haven't been announced yet. One of them is a new licensed book, which is another thing that I'm a huge, huge fan of as a kid. A thing we've actually never seen in comic book form before, so that's exciting. I've written a new DC thing, which is being worked on right now, which I'm not sure when that'll be announced. Pretty much every character I write at DC is going to be a first time for me, so this will be a character I've never written before. Another creator-owned thing I've started working on, with an artist that I have worked with multiple times before. But in the same way as Bug Wars is sort of unlike anything else I've ever done, I can say the same thing about this new creator-owned book. It's a creator-owned genre I've never worked in before. And maybe a new Marvel thing. I haven't started writing that yet, but had some phone calls and maybe agreed to another Marvel thing. So my relationship with Marvel is still great. I still friends with everybody there, and I don't feel like I've got to leave Marvel to go to DC. I love kind of working. Certainly these last few years, I've loved working, everywhere. I've did stuff in the new EC line for Oni. I wrote some more Conan for Titan. I wrote a Berserker one-shot for Boom. So I've loved kind of doing whatever sounds cool. So I've continued to do Marvel stuff when something cool comes up. I do want to try to, in terms of work for hire stuff, I want to focus on DC, which since that's all very much fresh and new for me. So you'll continue to see me do more DC stuff. I got a short list of characters that I would love to write at DC. Beyond that, there's something else I've been working on for 5 years that's not a comic. I don't know what more I can say about that. Hopefully, at some point soon, you'll be able to see the results of that labor. That's kind of what I've got going on right now. Does anybody have questions about anything? Yes, right here in the front.
So if I can just ask two related to Absolute Superman. Sure. The first one was, what was the inspiration behind the idea to use the dust of Krypton as Superman's cape?
What was the idea behind the decision to use the dust of Krypton as Superman's cape? It kind of, initially when we were talking about the book, Raphael Albuquerque was the artist who was attached, who eventually had to back out because of all the horrible flooding in Brazil.
Yeah.
But the first designs we were doing were with him. And I think before I'd even had the thought of like the rationale of the cape, I think he did a version of the cape that had kind of a gradient texture to it. Where it just sort of fading and breaking apart at the edges, which looked really cool. And I had the thought of, maybe the whole thing's made out of dust, which I already knew Jor-El was going to be a miner. I knew his parents were not scientists, that they were going to work kind of very working class manual labor jobs. His mom's a mechanic. So I was like, he figures his dad coming home from work every day just kind of caked in that red dust. And so I like the idea of that's what the entire suit is made of. Because we also see like that they're mining that sunstone crystal because their technology is based in large part on that. In the cities in Kandor, there's giant towers. Their supercomputers are made entirely out of sunstone crystal. So I like the idea of it shows how the suit's sort of made by his mom and his dad. His dad mined that crystal, and his mom made the suit. So I like that connection. The visual possibilities are really cool. Like you've seen a lot of times where when Superman comes in, it's like a storm. It's like a huge red dust storm. I also like the idea that it's also sort of like he's wearing the ashes of Krypton on his back. It's literally the last dust left of that planet. It was all that. I think it's kind of just from those initial designs by Rafa, and then other Rafa Sandoval became involved and did the finished design, and so you get the dust, and then you also get kind of the lava looking effect on his arms, which again kind of speaks to the nature of Krypton. So I loved all that, how all that came together, and we'll continue to see more development with that suit and it's called Sol, the sentience of it. And there's more issue. I think the issue 12. Issue 12 is a very Sol-centric issue. So you see more of like what was Kal-El's time like. We saw when he first came to Earth. We saw his time with the Kents, brief as it was. What happened right after that? We'll see more of that in issue 12, where it's really just him and his talking cape, on the run together. Sorry, did you have another question?
Yeah, so real quick, the second question was, so the specific version of Brainiac we have in the comic, I think it's Brainiac 450,000. I forgot the rest of the digits.
Sure,
I just wanted to know, was there any significance to that number, or was it just a random number pick? Okay, got you. I was like trying to read into it. I'm like, I don't know what the hell that means, so I figured I'd ask you.
Yes,
But
yes, there's deep significance.
I'll keep reading into it. Yeah. Thank you.
So the establishment of the absolute universe comes after Darkseid finally kind of understanding his place in the entire context of what we know to be the entirety of the DC universe. As I read it from the one shot, the All-In special, the absolute universe is his hand of creation, then creating what we know to be the absolute universe. So I think there was a panel also that I mentioned, and just in the context of DC altogether, if Darkseid is meant to be the ultimate evil and the ultimate symbol of dismay, Superman is the foil to that, to be the hope of the universe. But given what you said today, is Superman's place in the absolute universe meant to rise to a level to meet the absolute Darkseid? Or now that we've seen like the absolute Mirror Master and the regular Mirror Master meet, are we expecting to just have like our classic Superman take the reins, and eventually that's how that situation goes? If you can go on.
Yeah, I mean that's a big question just in terms of the overall the Darkseid part of the absolute universe. I mean that's that all stems from kind of what Scott Snyder and Josh Williamson have been doing, right? Like what that was set up in the All-In special, and you'll see them continue to tell that story. I'll leave it up to them to talk about that. That's more their story. If you've read the All-In special, you understand that Darkseid is like an intrinsic part of the absolute universe. In terms of what that means, where that goes, we don't know. If you've only been reading the absolute stories, there's no mention of Darkseid, right? That word doesn't seem to exist in the absolute universe. So you have no idea that's a part of the story. There's something that seems to be darker about this world, and nothing has seemed to work out great for anybody, and the heroes seem more alone and more in danger than what we're used to. So to me, I'm of two minds, right? Like that's a story that's going to be told, the Darkseid part of it. I think I've acknowledged that in Absolute Superman with the Father Box popping up, which is fourth world technology. When Talia is talking about God, who do you think she's talking about, right? Like, I don't think she knows who Darkseid is. She just knows this is literally the guy who created this universe. This is God. He's a weird, dark, fucked up God. I think that's all you need to know for reading the Absolute Universe. The Father Box part of it will continue to lead to stories, but really the main part of that Darkseid story is going to be Scott and Josh and what they're telling. And I think it's, those are two different stories that will connect in some ways. And I think if you read both of those, you'll get that. I don't think you don't need to know all that though to read the Absolute books, right? Again, like everything that you need, I should be giving you on the pages of that book. So that still will continue to be my mandate. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Way in the back.
Within the absolute universe, is there a character that you're particularly excited to see Superman interact with?
Oh yeah, I mean all of them. Lots of characters. Yes, I mean what can I tell you without giving away anything too spoilery? I can tell you we'll see him fight Ra's al Ghul coming up. Like that's coming up soon. Or Raish. I feel like everybody at DC pronounces his name differently, so I'm from Alabama. I'm not good at pronouncing things.
It's Nolan's fault.
Sorry?
It's Nolan's fault.
Sure. Who else? I mean, well, there's more people in Smallville that we'll meet. We got a mention of Metropolis in one issue, right? So you can expect we'll go there at some point. I have said, from the very consciously didn't want to do a Lex Luthor story right out of the gate. You can expect he'll show up at some point. I can just promise you that it won't be what you expect. As with again, my mandate continues to be, I want everybody we meet to be in the wrong place. What does that mean for Lex Luthor? We'll have to wait and see. And other big villains and other heroes that Superman will be meeting. Anybody he meets, it's going to be the first time, right? The first time he meets another hero. The first time he really hasn't met anybody yet with real superpowers. So who's the first person that he meets who does have superpowers? So I don't know. You guys tell me. Like, you can think about it and tell me who would be the number one villain on your list you would want to see absolute Superman. I mean, I know who's on my list, but you guys can come let me know at my table. Like, who's top of your list? Cool. Well, yes, right back there.
You're working on so many things. I just wondered if you could talk about your process at all. Are you writing 9 to 5 every day, or more than that, or?
Oh, I don't get up at 9.
How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, my 25 years into my comic book career, my process remains a work in progress. I guess. Work in progress, tattooed right there. Like I mean, the easy answer is you're just always working. You know, like sometimes that work is me sitting at a desk typing things. Other times it's me going for a walk, thinking about things, folding laundry, taking a shower. I write so many things in the shower. Sometimes you've been sitting at the desk banging your head against the wall, and you get up and go do something else. Suddenly you figure something out. So I work from home, so my desk is in the basement, which is like a giant cocoon. Like I like things. I'm very sentimental about things. I got a toy case next to my desk. It's full of Star Wars toys and action figures I played with as a kid. Surrounded by books and stacks of long boxes. 30,000 comics sitting in my basement. I never throw things. Ray Bradbury told me one time, "Don't ever throw anything away." So I've taken that to heart. So I like to cocoon myself there and just kind of work all the time. I mean, I think of it like a chef. Like if you're having a dinner party and you're having to cook like 4 or 5 different things at once. You got to make use of all your oven and stovetops, and some things take longer to simmer, right? Some you can't always rush it. Like this one needs to percolate for a little bit longer. That to me is the hard part. That's the real work. That's the heavy lifting. When I'm sitting down to actual type shit down, that's the easy part. The hard work should have been done already by that point. Of just, what is this story? What am I trying to say with this? Not just, what are the beats of what happens? Who's this guy fighting this issue? But what is this about? What is different about this or exciting about it? Why am I excited about this? If I don't know the answer to that, none of you are going to be excited about it. So that's all the hard part of it. And I think the more, to me, like the longer, I mean, some of them need to simmer for a long time to get to that point. Some of them come together quickly in terms of ideas. But to me, it's just about clarity. Like, what point do I have that clarity? I know what this is. I know what it looks like. I know what the important visuals are. I know what it sounds like. Like if I was going to make a soundtrack, I could tell you songs that would go on it. Like the more clarity I have about that, the better it's going to be, right? I mean, I still have to be able to communicate that to the artist, and they have to have their own sense of clarity of what it is, and still a collaboration. But to me, the hard part is just reaching that sense of clarity. And then just in terms of writing scripts, I usually write a script a week. And yeah, I mean, I do like to sleep late, so I don't work strictly 9 to 5, but yeah, I mean, I try to work daylight hours. My partner is a nurse, so she works, long nurse hours, and she has young kids that I have to pick up from school. So I have like real adult responsibilities that you have to do, but I kind of work when I can during the day, and then also work late at night too, which I feel like is probably my sweet spot. The times I got divorced during COVID, and my son, who's 20 now, would go back and forth week on, week off. So there, for the first time in my life, I had those weeks where I was, going back to when I was a kid, where I was just sort of, I could do whatever the fuck I wanted to do. I was by myself. And I would fall down work holes where I would just realize I haven't spoken to another human in like a couple of days. Unless I went to the grocery store, like, no one knows I'm alive. So I think I'm more geared to that of just, I kind of enjoy, again, it's writing, the act of writing makes me happy. It's never like drudgery of like, oh shit, I gotta write another comic. It's like, oh shit, I get to write another comic, and literally it feels like a very selfish job if I'm just doing shit that makes me excited, makes me happy. Then yeah, it gets to go off and get drawn by amazing artists, it becomes comics, I can go to the store and buy, and you guys can read them and people can respond to them, I get invited to shows around the world, that's all awesome. But it still just starts, to me the most important part, the most gratifying part is just that actual act of writing. So it helps when you just really enjoy it and you will just do it all the time. I did it all the time as a kid for free, making zero money, and now I just get to do it and also pay my light bill. But it's still just the core, like I feel like the day that it stops being that, I should quit and go work at Taco Bell or something. But thankfully that day has never come. So, sorry, that's a very long, meandering answer to your question. The short answer is, yeah, I work roughly 9 to 5 and write a script a week. Yes, in the front of me.
So you mentioned having all these ongoings that you kind of do all at once. And I wanted to ask, have you ever had an idea that you came up with for one specific story, and then as you kind of went on, you went, wait, that would actually work way better for a different story, and you kind of cannibalized it over? Has that ever happened to you?
Sometimes it's not just that you think, you realize, oh, I'll save this for something else. Sometimes just things don't work out, things change. A lot of what you're doing is going to be dictated by the publishing schedule, the publishing side of things, and it's not always just, you don't always get to do exactly what you want to do. You have to work within bounds. So, I had a Constantine idea. Like I did a couple issues of Hellblazer before I became Marvel exclusive, and I had another idea. Sorry, I have no idea what time we're supposed to be done here. If anybody knows.
I think it's right about now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll do a lightning round. But I had a Constantine idea of like Constantine goes to hell and a demon's running around in his body on Earth, which I didn't get to do, but then I basically did that with Wolverine a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, you had right back there. Oh, when the script's got short. Yeah, I absolutely do miss those 2 pages. Yeah, when I first started in comics, we were doing 22-page stories, and they went to 20, and you think, well, 2 pages, that's not that big a deal, but it is a huge deal when it's 20 from 22 to 20, because that dictates, especially things visually. Sometimes you just don't have room to do like a splash page when you really like to do a splash page. So the cool part of that, of doing creator-owned books, is they can be as however long I want them to be, right? Or however long me and the artist want them to be. So with Bug Wars, I think we're usually 22 or 24, but then there was an issue that was 40, there was an issue that was 30. So you have that luxury of doing, this is what the story needs, And I've also been doing 30-page stories. I did Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, which is 30 pages, and Punisher and Namor were both 30 pages, which feels luxurious. It's like you're going from driving a Geo Metro to a big Cadillac. It's all in this room, it's spread out. So I love that. Sorry, any last questions that go before they kick us out? Yes.
Really quick. If you could see Uncle Scrooge join any superhero team, which one would it be? From DC or Marvel?
Yeah, Uncle Scrooge doesn't need a super team.
That's right. I mean, he could fund his own, I
He has
guess.
his own one duck superhero team.
That's fair. That's fair.
Just with your run on Star Wars, you managed, you fleshed out all of the sagas in between. Did you have any mandates to not use certain characters, or were you given free reign to create the story?
Yeah, there was definitely characters I couldn't use, things I couldn't do. For the most part with Star Wars, I was surprised at the stuff they did let us do. I think we snuck in, like Kieran and I both just started grabbing for big beats initially. I think before they were prepared. Like we were the first new Star Wars thing out of the gate, after Disney bought Lucasfilm. I think they were scrambling to figure out what the hell they were doing and ramp up production on all sorts of stuff. So, looking back, I'm kind of shocked that we got, I got Vader and Luke Skywalker face to face in issue 1, and I figured out a way to have Luke fight Boba Fett, even though we couldn't see Boba Fett. We brought in Jabba the Hutt, and I did a scene with him and Vader. We did the moment where Vader first hears the name Skywalker in connection to this whoever blew up the Death Star. So those are big, important beats. As things went on, they got harder and they were more particular and could be kind of frustrating at times. And doing the comics, we were very much the low men on the totem pole. It was sort of, well, you can't do this because they're doing something in a movie that's similar. Even though it's like, well, they're not the same at all though. But it's just like I was told at one point, Luke Skywalker can't go fishing. Because he catches a fish at one point in the whichever
Last
movie.
Jedi.
Yeah.
Last Jedi. I was like, is that the only time he's ever gone fishing?
How did he learn
learned
that
how
skill?
to fish. But I think they did eventually. I think I got to do that in that issue. It's so frustrating stuff like that at times. So yeah, there was stuff that I couldn't get to do, and I did almost quit that book a couple times. But I was very happy that I stuck it out and I was left at a good time. And still, maybe at some point I'll do more Star Wars. Who knows?
All right, so that's been the video. Thank you very much, guys, for checking this out. I'm gonna have a little bit more information on Jason Aaron coming out on the channel. I've posted some already to some of my other media, but it will be coming. If you're interested, stay tuned. Thank you all very much again for listening. Once again, I've been Alex or RCG Blade, and take care. Have a good one.